Yeah, it's a thin line because you don't want your facial reactions or your responses to whatever they're saying to then be the focal point of attention.
Hmm.
It's I guess one of the reasons that I had significant success because I had a knack of even if I wasn't conducting the interview or had any important comment to make, if you were watching an interview with somebody who I was managing, especially if it was a minute or two, you never saw me standing there with a blank look on my face like my mind is 1,000 miles away somewhere else. Again, how can I expect the fan to tune in and listen to everything that's being said if I'm standing there and the manager for somebody and not interested myself? Very important.
Right. So when Orange says Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, you guys like the Four Horsemen, Ole, Tully, obviously it's going to be yourself, Orange, and Flair. Is that something where immediately it like clicks in your head and clicks in all their head, like, we got something here, this is going to be great, this is awesome, kind of just said it, and I think this, we're going to roll with this and this is going to be huge? Or was this just another promo and let's kind of move on to the next one?
It was just one of those things and that's why Arn is a treasure in our business, because he always and to this day gives a lot of thought with anything that he's talking about. And in that case, he talked about, never. I almost can memorize the promo where he's saying to somebody sitting there, "Take a look at the screen." He said, "Look at the people that are in this screen," and he said, "They dominate this profession." And trying to draw a comparison, I have to go outside the wrestling business, and the closest I can come to it is to talk about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and held up the four fingers. It was just a line that I don't know if he gave a lot of thought to, that just because some great things came out of him, and maybe we're nodding as he's talking. And it really wasn't until that was like on a Saturday, and we had a Greensboro show that night, and we go to Greensboro, and we go into the ring, and there was a group of guys that were regulars that had the whole front row on the one side. They were kind of heel fans, and we looked over, and they're looking with a smile on their face and holding up four fingers, and they're chanting "Horsemen, Horsemen." And it was a week or two went by, and Jimmy Crockett one day says to me, he said, "What's this thing about horsemen I keep hearing about?" I said, "Well, it's something that Arn, just in his great mind, threw out there, and it struck a note with apparently a significant number of the fans, because that night when we went to the arena, they were yelling 'Horsemen' and holding up the four singles that has become the symbol of excellence." And I said, "I think you should pay attention to it, because it wasn't like this is an idea that how can we market this? How can we sell this? We all have to say this." It wasn't like that. It just was something that Arn said, and the fans heard it. And that night, like I say, we went to the arena. They hear a lot of interviews, and a lot of things you say, you think, "Oh boy, I hope this is a good interview and gets the point across," or whatever. And then something as simple as that is what they remember. And they say "Horsemen," and they're holding up, and they are the ones that started it, and they're the ones that kept it going.
Such a great, memorable promo. The only time this much havoc is reached by this few number of people, you need to go all the way back to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Just such an awesome, memorable quote by Arn. And he's so smart. I don't even know if he realizes how smart he is sometimes with some of these awesome quotes.
He's so talented that it just flows from him. And that faction, if I call it a faction rather than say, well, a team or group, we're different. We were different than everybody else. That's why I try to latch onto a word or a term that you don't hear that often. But we were a faction, and we were people that each member was already at the top of their game. A lot of times you'll have three guys, which was a little bit of a degree when they brought Luger in. When they finally, because Luger was just starting in Florida. He had the body, and he got sideways with Bruiser Brody, if I remember correctly, and he was in a cage match down there, and Brody had a short fuse, and I don't know what Luger did that set him off, but he oh boy, it's like it got so bad for Luger that Luger finally climbed out of the cage of his own power, walked straight to the dressing room, grabbed his clothes under his arm, and out the back door, and was gone. It just, oh boy, Bruiser Brody was one of a kind. Boy, I have such, Frank Goodish, I have such great fond memories of him. He was a treasure in our business, and it was a sad thing that we lost him under the circumstances, and so young, because God, he was one of the all-time greats.
There's no doubt about that. So great. And that's funny because that's how you basically get Luger, and then Ole wants to go a separate way. But rewinding just a bit, I definitely want to get to that in a second, but definitely want to touch on Ole, because he's one of those guys that people are just like, man, I mean, they either have a strong opinion of him, they hate him, or they have a strong opinion, they love him, that's the way it is. Like if you ask Arn, he thinks Ole's great, loves him, has nothing bad to say about him.
Put my name on that list too.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
huge Ole fan. Huge Ole fan.
How come it's like that though? You either love him or you absolutely hate him. How come he's like that?
Well, I went to Crockett Promotions, I think in '71, and when I got there, Ole and Gene were the top tag team, and so I was around Ole, and I was, I was a little bit old. I wasn't a kid. Like I say, I was close to my 28th birthday, so I got kind of, for a young guy coming in, kind of got treated a little bit differently than, say, another young guy that was a lot younger in age. And I kept my mouth shut, and I was like a sponge, just wanting to absorb everything that I could, take the things that I thought applied to me, and just to be informed about everything. So I made a lot of trips with Ole. And Ole at that time, boy, he was big into the stock market, and he would spend all kinds of time charting stocks, and he took pride in wanting to take the money that he made in the business and put it to work for him. And he used to kind of make fun of guys who wanted to go out and impress the girls and spend a lot of money on clothing or buy fancy cars that they really couldn't afford. And I call that the myth, like in my book, because their wrestling fans would see you on television and say, "Oh, wow, you're on TV. You're a huge star. You must be a millionaire. You must be making all kinds of money." And a lot of the guys in the wrestling business, most of them, just made a living. And a lot of those same guys bought cars fancier than what they could really afford with the money they were making. And because they got wrapped up in what I call the myth, was they were trying to live up to an image of what the fans thought they would be, and spent every dollar to do it. And some guys ended up, their career was over and had nothing left to show for it, which was very sad.